Okay, so what if the entire global drug trade wasn't just a messy network of rival gangs, but was actually a single, centrally controlled corporation? Today, we're going to dive into the absolutely explosive theory from a book called Dope Inc. And trust me, it makes a claim that is designed to completely flip how we think about this entire illicit industry.
The book Dope Inc. throws out a staggering number right away, $250 billion. And get this, that's what it estimates as the minimum annual revenue for the U.S. drug trade alone. But the real core of its argument isn't just the number. It's the idea that this isn't a bunch of separate gangs. It's one single, massive enterprise.
So a number that huge just makes you wonder, right? If this is one big coordinated empire, who's sitting on the throne? Who are the executives and the bankers actually pulling the strings? Well, the book's answer is probably not who you'd expect.
To even begin to understand the book's shocking answer, we first have to get our heads around the central concept that the entire thing is built on.
So, the authors argue that the global drug trade isn't the chaotic mess of competing cartels we all imagine. They give it a name, Dope Inc. They say it's a single, hidden entity. And here's the kicker. They claim its creation and its continued control lies with a powerful, British-centered financial oligarchy.
And the stakes, as the authors see it, well, they couldn't be higher. They don't frame this as just a crime problem. They call it an undeclared war being waged directly against the United States. That's a pretty provocative claim, and it really sets a dramatic tone for their entire investigation.
Now, if you're going to make a claim that big, you'd better have a backstory. And the book alleges this whole story didn't just start with modern cartels. Nope, it says the roots of this thing stretch back for centuries.
So here's how the book lays out its historical case. It claims it all kicks off in 1783, when this financial group tied to the opium trade takes power in London. That, they say, leads directly to the 1840 Opium War, which they describe as the moment the dope trade took over Britain. Then, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, or Hong Shang, is founded, and they peg it as the central bank for this whole operation. And the final critical piece of the puzzle, U.S. prohibition. The book shockingly calls this Britain's opium war against the United States, a move that created a massive organized market for narcotics.
Okay, so if this is a multi-billion-dollar global corporation, how in the world does it handle all that cash? The book spends a huge amount of time on its theory of how Dope Inc. launders its astronomical profits.
The book breaks it down into a four-step cycle. First, you've got the massive problem of just collecting all that cash from the streets. Then, the offshore journey begins, where the money zips through this dizzying maze of accounts. Think the Caymans, Panama, all to hide where it came from. At key points, that cash gets converted into hard assets, like gold or diamonds, to completely break the paper trail. And finally, those valuables are sold, and the now clean money flows right back into the legitimate banking system.
The book then basically gives us a map of the alleged hubs of this financial network. It points to London as the world's leading center for hiding funds, and Switzerland as the master of layering accounts to make them untraceable. The Caribbean islands, they act as key stopping points, and Canada's Bank of Nova Scotia gets named specifically. But at the center of it all, Hong Kong is labeled the absolute capital of heroin financing.
And this chart really puts the size of the market into perspective. The book breaks down its valuation for just the top 3 U.S. markets. Marijuana at a jaw-dropping $128 billion a year, then heroin at $60 billion, and cocaine at $45 billion. We're talking about a $250 billion industry from just 3 products, all of which needs an incredibly slick financial system to even function.
But, the book doesn't just talk about systems and structures. It starts naming names. It points to what it calls citizens above suspicion. Powerful figures, it claims, are sitting at the very heart of this network.
First on the list, it points to the Bronfen family, famous for their Seagram's liquor empire. The book's theory is that the family's deep roots in prohibition make them a key part of the Canadian connection for supplying and financing the U.S. market.
The book also makes the absolutely stunning claim that former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger's name was actually floated by the Medellin cartel for some high-priced lobbying. But more than that, it positions him at the intersection point of all the financial, political, and intelligence networks that it claims make up Dope Inc.
And through it all, one name just keeps popping up again and again, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank. The authors repeatedly fingered this institution and the families behind it like the Kiswicks as the primary, unbroken financial engine of the entire operation, tracing its role all the way back to the Opium Wars.
So after laying out this long history and naming specific people and institutions, what is the book's final ultimate point?
Well, it all builds to a startling reframing of the entire conflict.
The book's crucial takeaway isn't just about identifying an enemy. It's about redefining the entire battlefield. It argues the war has to be fought primarily on the financial front. The key isn't just busting street dealers, it's attacking the money laundering systems with, as the authors put it, special vigor.
This slide really captures the core of the book's argument perfectly. It wants to replace the popular view of the war on drugs, a battle fought on the streets against cartels, with its own thesis that the real conflict is a financial war, fought in boardrooms and offshore banks, against a hidden, powerful oligarchy.
And that leaves us right here. The theory in Dope Inc. is sweeping, alleging a single, top-down conspiracy controlling a $250 billion industry. It's a challenging, almost unbelievable idea, but the book forces you to sit back and ask, what if it were true?